Right.
Well, because you guys know the Horseman's is large enough where we could do, 4 to 6 people at a table, and spread them out even further. Have more outdoor seating and entertainment and things of that nature. So all of that will be taken into consideration to provide comfortability for people. So I know Brian's going to make the reservation. So once we put the deposit down, we're locked in. So, we would love for people to come, but of course, we want people to feel safe and comfortable doing it. And if you don't, there's no pressure. But you can still gamble.
Exactly. Yeah, we're gonna have our teams as far as picking the horses, and from everything I've heard, Kentucky Derby is a go. There's not, I'm not sure about how many fans are going to be allowed to be live, as kind of what's been going on with all the events, but I do think there will be some people allowed at the track, and so that it should be fun. And I'm looking forward to it. So I'm hoping that we can get enough people behind it. And I think the timeline is pretty good, because that's like another month and a half from now. So that gives a lot more people a chance to get those second vaccinations. And like Rebecca was saying, we should be able to accommodate even for people that just want to stay outside or want to keep a little bit of distance and have a table by themselves. We can pretty much do all of that, I think.
We can, and there's even, outside, we can get space heaters as well to, make sure people are comfortable and so forth. So
yeah, and I think the race is in the late afternoon. It seems like usually like 3:34 or something like that. So I guess we can kind of decide whether we want to make it more of like an all-day kind of activity. It starts at lunch, or whether we want to make it maybe the race and then a dinner afterwards. So I guess those are kind of the things we needed to think about.
And we'll have Uber on standby.
Yeah.
it's called the Uber app.
Yeah.
If they can find it out there in the middle of nowhere.
They can.
Oh, we have
They can find Cinnabar. They can find the Horsemen.
Yeah.
And so, like what Burke was mentioning as well, this is kind of a team effort also. And for those of you who have attended, actually, I'm pretty certain everybody, I mean, maybe Trisha hasn't, but we'll need people to contribute to the cause in regards to different committees. So, Burke and I will work together on what those committees look like, but consider what you would want to participate in regards to food, beverages, entertainment, decorations, things of that nature that help it all come together. Because the contributions of the group is really what makes it a great event.
And technology. I know last time we were able to get a big screen TV and do it off of Ken's iPhone, I think, in terms of the
that was my,
or maybe it was
that
yours.
was my iPhone. That was my iPhone.
Okay. So I'm hoping we still can do that.
Okay. So just take those things into consideration too, of where you feel you best could fit in and contribute to making it a great event. Okay. That's all I had, Brian. And then let anybody else, did I miss anything? Bill, you wanted to speak. You had a couple updates for international. Would you like to share? You're on mute.
The international committee made up of ourselves and the 6 other teams are considering projects at this point. I propose the one for consideration that we had contributed to in Bolivia for X-ray equipment. It's a pretty expensive project, close to $100,000, so it requires a lot of clubs putting in. And there was interest, but several questions related to the capabilities of the people to use the equipment. An alternative project that's being, I think, perhaps better supported by that group is one for toilets for women in India, in a slum area where they don't have any. We have already put some in that are community toilets, sort of like the sort of things you see in the parks around here. But there also is a proposal to extend that to private homes of some of the larger families. So that one's pretty well supported, and I would say is looked on more favorably by a number of the people than the Bolivian one at this point, probably because it would have more immediate possibilities of moving forward. So that's about my report at this point. Any questions on that? It's interesting. I got bombarded by questions from a new member of this committee, and I couldn't understand why she was so on top of all the questions about the extra equipment and position and sending of medical records and that sort of thing. And I looked her up, and she's a doctor, so that's why she's grilling me so heavily.
Hey, Bill, so if our proposal doesn't get chosen, then would we be participating in one of the backup options?
A certain amount of our funds would, yes, just by agreement among the clubs. And our DDF would go to that project. The cash that the club has already put into the Bolivian one is irrelevant to that discussion, because we can do anything we want with our cash. Although we do contribute a smaller amount of cash annually into the kitty for the 7 clubs by agreement. Pardon me. So in a sense, we would be doubling up on international at this point. I reported something interesting. The DDF, as you will all recall, is the return of money 3 years later of what we contributed to the Rotary International Foundation. Some clubs don't use their DDF, don't have a project for it, but do want cash for their local projects. And Peter Anderson was telling me that sometimes you can buy DDF, which for international projects is just as usable as cash, for maybe $1.50 of DDF for $1 of cash that you can exchange with some other club, which I thought was unique. I never had any idea of that. So if we ever get into a project where we want to load money into an international project, that's an option too.
So you can do that. When I was president of the club, we did buy some.
Did you?
Yes. Yeah, we were just a little short on something we wanted to do. So that's how we resolved it.
Well, good. We'll look to you for experience when if we want to do that.
Okay.
Thank you, Bill. I think that is the updates for the right now. We'll hand it back to Brian to introduce Jen and Bernadette.
Okay. Jen is our speaker today, and one of our guests, of course. I just wanted to let you know that Patricia is a guest, and also my wife, Terry. So we have Patricia has been here. This is like her 4th or 5th meeting, so she's doing pretty good. Can people put yourselves on mute? Of course, except for Jen. Jen Lee is a debt and credit attorney and owner of Jen Lee Law, a law firm with offices in San Francisco, San Ramon, and Tracy. She's a leading expert on debt, credit, and financial stress, having been featured in Consumer Affairs, U.S. News and World Report, and other national publications. Jen is the creator of several innovative programs to deal with financial stress and rebuilding after a financial disaster. Employees Are Assets is the name of her corporate program addressing financial stress in the workplace. It is estimated that employers lose $7,000 per year per employee due to the employee's financial stress, and Jen is helping to solve that problem. Jen is the co-author of Preventing Credit Card Fraud, a complete guide for everyone, from merchants to consumers, published by Roman and Littlefield in March 2017. Okay, Jen, you can also share your screen if you want to, but you're on.
Thank you. I will share my screen because a PowerPoint is much more fun to look at than me. But last time I was here, I believe it was January of 2019. And I had Bernadette with me. So the elephant in the room was with me. And since then, the world has drastically changed and a lot of new things have come up and COVID has impacted. And so now I'm still talking about financial stress, but there are a lot of scams and programs out there related to COVID and what creditors have been doing, that I started talking a little bit more about how everyone's likely impacted by this. And so I do have a legal disclaimer. My attorneys make me say this. Nothing in this is legal advice specific to you, but if you have questions, feel free to pop them in the chat box, or at the end, I'm happy to stick around and ask questions, answer questions. I always joke that people always ask for a friend. They always raise their hand and they ask for a friend because they don't want anyone else to know that they have a specific debt or credit problem. And so that's how the elephant in the room, the idea came up, was because so many people think that they're alone when it comes to debt, credit, identity theft issues. That people are embarrassed. And so I always use the statistic that 70% of Americans have a debt or credit problem of some sort. And that was before COVID. So those numbers have increased because during hard times, people often are struggling to make ends meet, can't make their rent payments, can't make mortgage payments. And so the elephant in the room has now become the elephant in the Zoom because we can't see each other in person anymore. So if you have questions, I'm going to talk a little bit about credit scores and what the CARES Act did for credit scores, some of the forbearance programs, and some of the scams that are out there targeting those new programs. So talking about financial stress is always a sensitive topic. People don't like to admit that there is a problem, but it kind of overshadows everything that in relationships and health. And so my goal by educating and talking about this is to navigate around some of these scams or quick fixes that are out there that you think are quick fixes that end up being a scam, so that people are educated on what they can do with financial stress. Basics on credit scores. I'm going to go through a few basics. I'm happy to answer questions about credit reports and credit scores because this is one of the most often areas of predatory practices out there. A lot of credit repair groups are scams. A lot of people telling you that you can monitor your credit and paying large monthly sums for that are overpriced. So I'm going to talk about credit reports and credit scores. One of the first myths I always get is checking my credit causes my score to go down. And this is not true if you are personally checking your own credit. So if you're signing up through annualcreditreport.com to check your credit, if you are signing up through Credit Karma, which is free, if you sign up through those services that check your own credit, those don't cause your score to go down. This rumor came about, this myth came about because when you actually apply for credit with someone like a car dealership or a mortgage, when they run your credit, it shows up differently and that starts lowering your score the more times you have your credit checked. The reason for that is because if you start applying for a bunch of credit, they start wondering what you're doing. The algorithm's like, okay, what are they doing? Are they trying to apply for a bunch of credit to run these up? What are they doing? So it's more of a risk factor than anything else. Your credit report actually does not include your credit score. And one thing they did during COVID with the CARES Act is before COVID, you could only check your report through annualcreditreport.com once per year per agency. So TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian, you are allowed once per year to get your report. The CARES Act changed that. So you can check it once a week now. And the reason they did that was because people were struggling with making payments on things and they wanted to make sure that everything was being reported correctly. And there has been a lot of problems because the CARES Act said that creditors could report, they couldn't report you delinquent due to COVID. But if you were already delinquent, the creditors are continued reporting people as delinquent. And so that's caused a lot of issues with credit scores as well. But your credit report doesn't include your credit score. It just includes a list of all the accounts and a list of previous addresses, current address, potentially employers, that kind of thing. And at any given time, you have up to 300 credit scores anyway. Getting married merges my credit report with my spouse's. Even in California, which is a community property state, your credit report is your own. It doesn't merge with your spouse. Now, that doesn't mean that your spouse can't affect your credit if you're co-signers on something that's on both of your reports. This often comes up during divorces, and it's not so much a scam, but something people don't know about is that if your house, your mortgage is in both of your names, and your spouse was your future ex-spouse, or your ex-spouse was supposed to refinance it and can't, it's still going to stay on your credit report until that's actually refinanced. And your income isn't anywhere on your credit report. I often have clients who come in who make way more money than I do, like $1 million a month. I've had a client who made $1 million a month and had bad credit. And he couldn't understand why. He's like, well, I make good money, so why aren't they taking that into account with my credit? I'm like, yeah, but you don't make your payments on time. So you're not a good credit risk, even if you have $1 million a month to put towards your credit. So your income has nothing to do with your credit score. Someone making $10,000 a year can have a better score than someone making $1 million a year. A few things that are in your credit score that I like to remind people of. The number one thing that goes into a credit score, and when we're looking at scams, to payment history. So if you have one late payment on your credit report, it can knock your score down up to 200 points. So I had a client who went from an 820 to a 620 because he missed one Macy's card payment. It was a long story behind that, but it can drop it down significantly. The scam here with credit scores is a lot of companies are out there telling you that they can delete things off your credit. They can delete late payments. They can delete things. Not legitimately, they can't, unless it was actually a mistake that was made. So I have some issues with that. The other most misunderstood part about credit scores is what we call credit utilization. And credit utilization is a fancy word for saying how much of your limit are you using on your card. So if your card has a $1,000 limit and every month they're reporting to the credit reporting agencies that you're maxed out, that's going to really lower your score down. So it's basically looking to see how much of your credit you're using on a regular basis. This is most often misunderstood because people think, well, I have $30,000 of available credit limit. I just use this one card and max it all the time. It's per card or per account. So if you're charging everything up to the limit on one card each month, that can drastically impact your score. And a lot of times when people come in and they're like, I think something's wrong with my credit score, I'm like, the first thing we look at is credit utilization, because we fix that one piece and their credit score goes up 100 points. It's really a game. That's why I kind of included it in my scam talk, because there's ways to game the system. And then quickly, length of credit history, inquiries, and various collection accounts make up the other 25-ish% of your score, 35% there. And I always like talking to retired groups because they have the best length of credit history. The optimal length of credit history is more than 30 years. So if you have credit history for more than 30 years, that is the optimal length. And they're looking at your oldest account on there. There are some tips out there regarding adding your kids as an authorized user on an account when they're young, so they can start building credit history. That works with a lot of cards, but you want to check and make sure that it's actually reporting to their credit. Don't just add them to a random card. And of course, don't give them a card when they're 10 years old to go to Toys R Us or whatever. And then on the other side of financial stress with credit, there's good and bad debt, supposedly. I hear this all the time, that there's good and bad debt, but there's a lot of scams out there when it comes to these types of debt. So I see most often debt settlement companies causing problems for clients because they will promise things like, you don't have to file for bankruptcy, you have the right to settle your debt for pennies on the dollar. It's really bad late night television commercials. So if you're up late at night and you can't sleep and you're watching television, you'll see these commercials for these companies. The problems with a lot of those types of offers that you receive in the mail and on TV is they don't tell you the downsides. They don't tell you that you're going to get sued as part of their program, so that can be stressful. They don't tell you that your credit score is actually worse doing debt settlement than it would be if you did a bankruptcy. So they don't tell you the downsides. It's just a salesperson when you call in. And if there's one thing I could get through to people is to check your sources of information on when you're signing up for those types of programs to make sure that they're actually required to tell you all of your options and not the one that they're selling you on. And so a lot of these debts came into play when COVID hit. And so mortgage relief is probably the biggest one right now that's very controversial. When I checked last week, 7% of mortgages in the country are currently not being paid in forbearance. That's a huge number. It is way higher than the foreclosures in 2008. So the problem with that is the banks can't foreclose because we're in this COVID forbearance, whatever that means, but they're all stacking up out there. And the concern is that people are going to get scammed by people promising to get loan modifications again, like it happened back in 2008, 9, and 10. There have been some good things that have come out of the CARES Act and then the most recent acts. And that has been that government-backed loans, they have to offer an option to put those payments onto the back of the loan instead of requiring that those payments be made all at once as soon as the mortgage starts getting paid again. That was what I was really worried about when they first announced this 3-month or 6-month forbearance. I'm like, great, my clients can't pay their mortgage for 3 months. Let's just say it's $2,000 a month, but on the 4th month, they're gonna want $2,000 plus $6,000 in order to bring the mortgage current. So that was my concern, and I was happy to see that that has not been the case for the most part. But if you know someone or if your family members have mortgages in forbearance, just have them keep an eye on what's happening with that, because I have sale dates that are getting set by mortgage companies and then they're just postponing them. So basically what happens is if the moratorium on foreclosures for government-backed loans ends on March 31st, I've got sale dates that are already set for April 2nd and 3rd, hoping that the moratorium will end. And then it becomes much harder to do that. So watch out for that kind of thing in your community, friends and family. It's a hard topic for people. The other options on credit reporting, encouraging everyone to check their credit reports because a lot of creditors are messing up credit reporting during COVID. If you were allowed a forbearance, if you were allowed anything like that. Credit cards are all over the board. The credit cards are all over the board as far as some of them are offering forbearances, some of them are saying, oh, we'll take you down to 0%, but we're gonna close your line of credit. So a lot of communication is required on these so you don't fall into some kind of trap that you weren't aware of. And then finally, private student loans and taxes. Taxes are, the IRS canceled all installment agreements last year, put them on pause. And now I've got them sending out a lot of notices again that they're starting to pick up with those. So for taxes, the scam there is again, late night television when they're saying, oh, we'll settle your tax debt for pennies on the dollar. I see that all the time. And a lot of times at those programs, you pay $5,000 to $10,000 to the company to settle your tax debt, and then it actually doesn't get solved, and then you're in a worse position than you were before. So again, be careful who you're talking to about things. This is just a few resources for mortgage forbearance and repayment. The CFPB, the consumerfinance.gov website, has some really good options for mortgage forbearance and what your rights are. So please use that website as a resource instead of whatever Google says these days. And then the CARES Act applies to federally backed mortgages only. The non-federally backed mortgages have all kinds of different programs. In California, had worked out a deal with some of the big banks, and then that ended. And so now it's kind of up in the air sometimes whether they can foreclose or not. They always have to keep checking. And then student loans. The reason why I talk about student loans a lot is because that typically is thought of as good debt. People think, oh, student loans are a good debt. And what's become of that is people took on way more student loan debt than they could ever possibly pay back sometimes. And a lot of parents and grandparents. I have so many people in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s now with student loan debt for their kids that has impacted their retirement. And so I talk about student loans, even if I'm not talking to a young group of people, because people just starting out in college, because it's become a global problem, at least an American problem because of how we are. They're constantly changing. You may have seen in the news that there are programs out there, they're going to cancel $10,000 of student loan debt. Then it was $50,000, and then President Biden said, nope, we're going back to 10,000, but I'm not sure what we're doing. So right now, the current status is all federal loans that are in repayment status are in forbearance through September of 2021, through the end of September 2021. They're at 0% interest, but it's only for federal loans and only for federal loans that aren't serviced, that were sold off to a private servicer, which some of them were from the mid 2000s. Private loans are not in forbearance. So right now, the private loan companies are still suing and garnishing wages because they are not bound by what the government did with the federal loan program. So that's been really hard on people. And then this warning I put in every presentation, if you've ever seen me speak before, and I did it the last time I was here 2 years ago, please don't ever take on a student loan for anyone who's not yourself, including your children. Unless you have the assets to back it up. If you have assets and you're just using it because you want the loan and you're going to pay it off, that's fine. But I have a lot of 60 to 70-year-old clients right now, and their Social Security is getting garnished by 15% for federal student loans that were taken out for their kids' colleges. They've cashed out retirement accounts to try to pay off things, so there's no retirement savings. And then these student loans at $200,000, some of them are as high as $200,000. So I always tell people, be very, very careful about taking student loans out for anyone who's not yourself. And there are tons of scams out there of people telling you that, oh, you qualify for forgiveness or you qualify for a lower payment. Now, if you pay us $75 a month, we'll lower your payment. Please check on those and don't fall for those. And here's the update. The payments are suspended. They did make it so that employers can contribute to assist employees with student loan payments. So that may be beneficial if you're in the working world and your employer contributes to that. Trusted resources so you don't fall for scams. Like I said, the CFPB is a really good option for getting information. The U.S. House Committee put out a frequently asked questions on the CARES Act back last year in March. I can't believe it's been a year. It's been such a crazy year, but they put out this frequently asked questions, and it's still very useful on, I mean, the CARES Act was, I can't remember how many thousands of pages that thing was. It was hard to parse through and figure out exactly what got affected and what could help. And then also talk to trusted colleagues in accounting, legal, and financial services. If something sounds too good to be true, or you're getting a weird feeling about a phone call you get, talk to someone who's either local or who you know that you can figure that out. The examples I usually use, like if your phone pops up and it says Apple's calling you, Apple's not calling you. They're trying to get into your computer. If you answer the phone and there's someone saying, this is the IRS, we have a warrant out for your arrest, the IRS does not call you to tell you that they're gonna come arrest you. That's not how it works. You will know long before you get a phone call that the IRS is looking for you. The other ones I get are the ones where your son or your grandson or granddaughter is in Mexico and needs money type things where they impersonate someone. A lot of those. And then if anyone asks you to pay a bill with like iTunes gift cards, that's a scam too. That the IRS won't ask for you to pay a bill with iTunes gift cards, but it happens all the time. I've gotten voicemails on my work phone where it says, this is Jen Lee Law. We are a debt and credit attorney. And they will leave a voicemail saying, this is the IRS. If in order to get you off of our warrant list, you need to call in and make a payment with iTunes gift cards. I'm like, seriously, that really? And so I often will use those as blog posts and videos on Facebook just to show that they're just dialing numbers. They don't know anything about you. And as you start giving them information, then they can start twisting the story to make it sound like they know who you are. Any questions? I lost my chat box somewhere on here. It always moves around when I'm trying to present. But feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions too if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you, Jen. Do you guys have any questions? Chris, you going yes?
No, I'm good. My stuff pertaining to that is all good. I'm happy.
Good.
So
Yeah.
Jen, how many people did you say are not paying their mortgage right now?
Right now, the most recent one I saw was 7% are
7%.
delinquent.
Yeah.
7 or 70?
7.
7.
That's still a big number.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jen, a question about identity theft. I got a weird one where Wells Fargo sent me a check saying, we're sorry, we forgot to send you the full rebate on the account that was closed. I never had any record of that account. And I'm thinking it's possibly one of the ones they opened as part of a scam, but I need to check it. Do the credit companies, are they a source of that kind of check?
So credit reporting agencies was it a bank account or a credit account?
This was a checking account apparently that was closed that had been in my name.
That's interesting. So the credit report doesn't have current bank accounts on it, or doesn't have bank accounts on it. So that's interesting, but I mean, does anyone here work for Wells Fargo? I would encourage you not to bank at Wells Fargo. If that's just because I've had so many issues and consumer protection cases against them for years that I would be concerned with anything that Wells Fargo did.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
I've unfortunately had an account with them for about 40 years. So
Yeah, that's usually how it is. Yeah.
yeah.
Anything else? But yes, keep checking your credit report just because it's also good to keep an eye on things and make sure you know it's reported on there.
Thanks.
What kind of credit apps do you recommend? I use Credit Karma, and there's some new ones that have been coming out, but like Sesame Credit and apps and all that stuff. So do you recommend apps or?
Yeah, I use Credit Karma personally. So Credit Karma, the way that it's free, there's no fee for using Credit Karma. The way Credit Karma gets paid is they will recommend that you qualify for certain credit card offers, and they'll put it up on as an ad. And when you click on it, then Capital One turns around and pays them an affiliate fee. So Credit Karma is free. Just keep in mind that you're being sold to. Your information is there for the selling. But Credit Karma is good. For credit monitoring, AARP has a really good credit monitoring package, and AAA both have good credit monitoring. If you just want something to monitor, I tend to use Credit Karma just to monitor myself, and they will usually notify you if there's a change. But some people want like a paid service each month that's checking it too. And those are more reasonably priced. I wouldn't pay more than like $10 a month for credit monitoring. Anything else?
Okay.
It's a hard topic. I mean, it's a hard topic for people to get into sometimes, but I think everyone should be educated about it. So
yeah, I know those calls are crazy from the IRS, you know. This is crazy. Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, Jen. Keeping us up to date on what's going on. And we're really happy that you were able to make it to speak to us. And who knows, next year, we're probably going to need you again for the next item that's coming up. Maybe life after the pandemic or something.
Yeah, I'm happy to come back and figure out what's new then. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen.
All right.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Jen.
Okay, do we have anything else? Since we already talked about what's coming up next week, we're going to meet at the Britannia Arms, and hopefully I can be there. Always love to have a Guinness or something with you guys. So so just remember next week, 3:30 at the Britannia Arms. Okay, and I guess that's it.
Or we can meet at the Britannia Arms.
Yeah.
Or at the
You mean
Brit.
at
At the Brit.
or the
At
Brit.
the Brit is fine too. I don't know what the Britannia is.
Oh.
Have you already had a
All right, I'm
Guinness?
going to cut you off.
He had a
Okay.
Guinness.
Yeah.
Bye, guys.
And we have 10
Bye.
coming so far, right? 10.
I'll
Oh,
double
we
check,
do.
Chris. Chris, check your freaking email later tonight, okay?
Hey, easy, girl. Easy.
All right. right. See
All
you
right.
next week.
All right.
All right,
Take
y'all.
care.
All
Good
right.
to see
Bye,
everybody.
See you
guys.
next.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for coming, Paul.
You're welcome.
Good
Yeah,
being
good
here.
to see you, Paul.
Stay way here on. Bye-bye.
Bye. Olson, thanks for showing up.
I had to switch to another business meeting, but I came back. But now it's
Yes, I'm
over.
impressed.
But it's over
Yeah.
now, huh?
Yeah, it's over.
What's the
job.
long, what's the
See you.
long and short of it, Brian?
Check your credit.
Check my credit?
Yeah,
All
yeah.
right.
All right, I'll see you later.
Okay, bye.
Bye.